All right, so we're going to look at this is more conceptual than anything. There's a couple of really big concepts we want you to bury into your head as you're going through all of this, so you can start to look for them and open them up, right? And so what we're going to talk about is the idea that preferably we would love to get Mike not only prone, so face down to the ground, but splayed out. If he's face into the floor and his limbs are spread in opposite directions, he has the least mobility, the least options, and that's going to make things significantly easier for me to control. Just by keeping pressure down on him from this position, which is just not a good position, mind you, but just by keeping pressure down and keeping him from being able to build structures underneath him, there's not a ton he's going to be able to do from here. Even people, even if he like swings back and tries to just slash at me with a knife, there's not much going on, right? So this is a beautiful place to put people. It doesn't mean we're always going to get here, but this is Mecca. If I can sprawl them out and they're face down, I take away their mobility and things like that. As he starts to build structures, right? So as he starts to maybe get his knees or his elbows underneath him, now he's starting to create a base in which he can then move. He's starting to create openings and things like that. So now this position is significantly more difficult than sprawled out, just because, again, now that he has structures, he has more options for movement, he has more options for mobility, right? So now, in the same exact idea, if he rolls now to a side, putting his body facing me, right? So he falls over to the side, well, now he also has more mobility from the front, more access to the blade towards me, and that starts to make things more complicated, right? So if we look at this like almost in a hierarchy of things, this, where he's facing at me, is the shittiest position for me to find myself in. This is where the most variables are going to be that I have to control. This is where he's going to have the most movement, and I'm going to have to track and feel energy that way, right? If he's still on his side, but now I'm on his back, well, it's a little bit different, right? Because now, again, the blade getting behind essentially the plane of his body requires him to have a significant amount of mobility and dexterity and things like that. So me being behind him now takes away some options and some things, allows me to control a little bit better, makes it significantly more difficult for him to be able to get the blade back here to do any type of severe damage, right? He starts to go prone, right? And we're in this position, but he still has structures, so he still has like knees and elbows underneath him in some form. Okay, now, again, starting to build different kind of context. He necessarily can't get to me, quote unquote, but he can move to a better position from here. That's why we want to start collapsing those bases out from underneath him. That's why we want to start separating his body, getting to sprawl out, getting him prone and completely splayed and flattened out. And so this is an important concept to understand, because in this position, if I can keep him splayed and sprawled out, I may be able to control the blade without actually having to control the blade, right? The positions where I keep his head faced this way, keep his hips down into the floor, and make it difficult for him to build any type of structure, this isn't nearly as much of a threat as it would be in any other case, right? So essentially understanding what are good positions, where variables are larger that I'm gonna have to get into, and how I start to move from that and understand that hierarchy starts to allow you to expand your ability to defend against the blade, which is super important. That's the whole entire purpose of what we're doing with this, right? So facing you, bad. Being behind them, better. If they're turtle facing the ground, okay, not too shabby. If I can get them prone, completely flattened out, that's going to be like the really, really hot spot. So we want you to start looking for opportunities to do that, and then understand how large the threat is in each of those positions. So keep that in mind as you're exploring a lot of this stuff throughout the entirety of the program, and start looking for those opportunities and understanding that hierarchy as we go.